Oh boy. Hello everybody, my name is Kari and today I'm doing my December book haul. There's a lot of books, so I'm going to try to keep plots down to about a sentence or two so that this does not end up as long as my December wrap-up, because that was a long video. Let's get into it. We are going to start with the books that I bought over the course of about 3 weeks from December 1st to December 22nd before I went home for Christmas. First one, I did buy this full price because it just came out in December and I'm so excited, is The Light of All That Falls by James Islington. Sorry, I saw the F-A-L and I was like, the light fall that falls? That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, this is a very chunky fantasy series. It is a trilogy and we follow people who, one of whom has this magical power that's been not hunted, but you have to be leashed essentially to somebody with a different power. There's two specific powers, I don't remember what they're called, to keep the first power in check. And so one of our main characters, I think there's about 6, has that really dangerous main power that's called an augur. He's an augur, that's what it is. And there's, if I remember correctly, there's a wall and things are starting to go funny. But at any rate, there's a lot of politics in this. It is a very complex series. So I'm clearly going to have to read a synopsis of the first 2. Possibly just reread the first 2 before I get to this, because otherwise I will be beyond confused going into this. However, I really like this series, and I'm very excited. I also bought Queen Anne by Edward Gregg. Now we get into the library books. This is a nonfiction about Queen Anne of the UK. When was she alive? Well, Victoria. She's sometime in the late early 1700s. Obviously, I don't know a lot about her, and I think this was, let me rephrase this was very cheap, and it seemed like a good time to learn something about Anne. I also got Jane Boleyn by Julia Fox. This is about Lady Rochford, otherwise known as Jane Boleyn, who is Anne Boleyn's brother's wife. Jane Boleyn actually survives the whole Boleyn beheading thing, which is a bit of a miracle, but then ends up beheaded during Catherine Howard's reign. Things go badly for her. It's gonna be very interesting because I don't know a lot about her. She's not my primary focus, but I do want to know. Next we have Kingdom of Ice by Hampton Sides, which is a novel? That's a good question. I think this might actually be nonfiction, but also look at these end pages! They're so pretty. But this is, okay, nope, it's definitely a novel, but this is a novelization, basically, I think it's a novel again, of one of the polar expeditions. People die, people freeze, it's great fun, but it sounded really interesting, and since I know nothing about it but I like the cold, it sounded like a good idea. Then we have Sagas of Icelanders with a preface by Jane Smiley. This is what it sounds like. It is a collection of a whole bunch of stories from Icelandic peoples. It sounds really interesting. I know virtually nothing about Iceland except that it's beautiful and I want to go scuba diving there, and that's all I got. Obviously the other one that I bought was Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, which, come to think of it, I also want to read in January. This is a short book. It is the second book in the Children of Blood and Bone series, where our main character has magic, but magic has been stripped from the world by the king, who is a vicious piece of work. And she and a couple of her friends go on a quest to bring magic back. The first one ended really well. I mean, there's some insta-love, which, fine, I can deal with that, as I've said. But I am very curious as to where this is gonna go, so hopefully I can read this in January. I also bought the UK edition of Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff. I want a full hardcover set because my US covers, 2 of them are paperback and Dark Dawn is hardcover. And since Lumicrate was doing the reprinting of the UK hardcovers, I bought this one so that when those come in March, I will have a full set of hardcovers. Also, the covers are just really pretty. This is the 3rd in the Nevernight trilogy, which, if you haven't seen Pierre Ford's adaptation, check it out, link below, go, you are missing out if you haven't seen it, it's amazing and so good. I can't watch it that often or I think I'll just like die of a heart attack. I will be so excited. Anyway, this is basically the ultimate revenge story. Mia's family was killed and she decides to become the world's greatest assassin to take vengeance. I decided to continue a series with Valor by John Gwynne, which is book 2 in the Somebody in the Fallen. Faithful in the Fallen. It's right there, guys. Faithful in the Fallen. I have not read Malice, which is the first one, but I've heard great things, again from Piera. So I am curious. I got this cheap, and at some point I'll get to the first one so I can, keep moving on. One of the books on my December TBR that I didn't get to that I might try to get to in January is Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is the original manuscript. I mean, obviously it's not the original, but it's copies of. And so it has all these different things copied in of his writing, which is not what I expected to get, but I'm totally okay with it. I do want to read this. It's a novella, so it's pretty short. I think I can still read this in January, February, and be fine, even if it is Christmas, because I watch Christmas stuff in July, so there's that. One of probably my favorite books that I got is The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes, illustrated by Neil Waldman. This is a poem from, I believe, sometime in the 1800s, and when I was in dance, there's a song that we used. The author's name, or the songstress's name, I think is McKenna something. I don't know, I'll link that down below as well. Or better yet, I'll put her name on the screen. And it's about a 10-minute song where she sings all but one of the verses in the poem. And I remember telling my class and my teacher that it was a really good poem, but it was really depressing because, spoiler, she dies in the end. And they were all shocked because they hadn't listened to the lyrics. But because I had read the poem in 7th grade, I knew what happened. And I've loved this poem since 7th grade. I just think it's great. And so I found cheap copies of this and I gave one to my dance teacher and she loved it. But the best part is the illustrations because they are stunning. And oh my god, my favorite poem with some of the most beautiful illustrations is perfect. Then I bought SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. I've heard really good things, and having been following the Apollo series by Rick Riordan, I want to know more about Rome. Also, I read a fair bit about Nero last year, and so I also would like to know just generally more about Rome. I bought Maya of Thieves by Anne Turner. I bought this one predominantly to see if it's any good to give to one of my cousins. I think she would enjoy this. She has a fascination with ancient Egypt, or at least she did last time we talked. So I would like to read this. It'll take me about an hour and a half, and then bring it up to her next time I'm in Duluth. And no, I don't really know what it's about. Next we have The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is another revenge story. This one, out of the two of his I've read, is definitely my favorite. And I have the paperback copy, but I got this one on sale, and it's so pretty and shiny and blue and gold that for one of my favorite classics, I felt I needed. Next we have Seven Blades in Black by Sam Sykes. Piera recently read this and absolutely adored it. Again, I got it on sale. It is a fantasy where our main character has nothing but her name, story, and the weapons she used to carve them. And then we've got some powerful empires, and she goes into those with a list of 7 names. I'm assuming this is also a revenge-esque story. Then we have Northern Slave Black Dakota by Walt Bachman. This is the story of a black man who was born into slavery in Minnesota after slavery was outlawed. Quick history lesson, we have the Northwest Ordinance from 1787, which said that anything west of the Mississippi was not going to be slavery, and then we've got the Missouri Compromise of the 1830s, which said that anything south of Missouri was allowed to have slaves and anything north was not. We had to compromise to kind of, not break out into civil war, which we did about 30 years later anyway. But despite both of those, he was still enslaved in Minnesota in the 1850s. This was right before we became a state, which was 1858. And then he ended up fighting in the Dakota Wars alongside the Dakota natives who were, trying not to die. It never ended well for them. but it sounds really interesting. It's not what I expected. I naively, clearly assumed that because we had, outlawed slavery north of Missouri, we were gonna keep to that, but clearly we didn't. So it's time for me to learn some more about my country. We have a really cute cover, which is The Tower, the Zoo, and the Tortoise by Julia Stewart. Look at that cover, isn't it so cute? It is the answer. This one, we have a man who lives in the tower. He's a beefeater, and he works the tower. It's a tourist attraction. This is set in present day. There are a whole bunch of other characters that are very interesting, and the ghost of Sir Walter Raleigh. And I believe the giraffe gets loose. It just sounded very whimsical and fun. Next we have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I never intended to buy or read this, but it was $2. So given all of the amazing things I've heard about this book, I thought for $2, why not? This is a World War II story following two sisters that makes everybody cry. I got another classic, which is The Mysterious Flame of Queen Loana by Umberto Eco, and we follow Yambo, who is an Italian bookseller. He regains consciousness after a stroke and finds out he doesn't remember anything about his life, but he can remember every book he's ever read and every line of poetry, etc. So he's trying to, remember his life. Then I got The True Life of Mary Queen of Scots by John Guy. Alright, you know how I feel about Mary Queen of Scots, but this one, the first line of the synopsis, says the eminent historian John Guy, has unearthed a wealth of evidence that upends the popular notion of Mary Queen of Scots as a femme fatale and establishes her as the intellectual and political equal of Elizabeth I. Does that tell you anything? This may be a hate read for me. There may be a lot of screaming at the book when I do read it, but I am curious if it will change my opinion of Mary Queen of Scots, because while I think that she was an intelligent woman, I think she never used that intelligence because look at who she married. Anyway, I'm curious to see where this goes. I don't know that I will ever believe she was truly the equal of Elizabeth. Not because she couldn't have been, I think she definitely could have been, but because I think she was never raised or taught how to actually use her intelligence. It's a pity, but it's the truth, and she lost her head for it. Then we have For Liberty and Glory by James R. Gain. This is a nonfiction about Washington and Lafayette at the time of the American and French Revolutions. I have read about Washington. I read, not Darwin. Who wrote Hamilton? Chernow's book on Washington, in which Lafayette is a fairly prominent player, and I found that very interesting. I also look at this book every time I go to Barnes & Noble, so when I found it at my library thrift store, I thought absolutely. And now we get to the books that I didn't buy. They were gifted to me for Christmas. Well, most of them. This one I did buy for myself, but this is Major Impossible by Nathan Hale, which is apparently a Grand Canyon tale. Let's see, Powell traveled all over the States. When the Civil War started, he fought for the Union. In 1869, he went with the Colorado River exploring expedition to float through the Grand Canyon. I'm not sure who decided floating through the Grand Canyon in 1869 was a good idea, but apparently they did. So this is the story of him. Oh, that explains that. He lost an arm in the Civil War, hence the missing arm. I love this series. I love this author. I love the graphic novel style of history. It's perfect, so I had to get this one because it just came out. My friend Katie and I were at a tattered cover, which is where I bought Major Impossible, and we went to the bargain section because, obviously, where I found A Black Fox Running by Brian Carter. First of all, pretty cover, that's what caught my eye. Second of all, it says, this is the story of Wolfgar, the dark-furred fox of Dartmoor, and his nemesis Scoville the Trapper in the seasons leading up to the pitiless winter of 1947. As breathtaking in its descriptions of the natural world as it is perceptive in its portrayal of damaged humanity, it is both a portrait of a place and a gripping story of survival. It just sounds really interesting, and it looks pretty quick because it's not written super small. I'm intrigued. Then we have The Tale of Murasaki by Liza Dalby. Murasaki was the woman who wrote the Tales of Genji, I believe. Yep, Tale of Genji in Japan, which I read part of. I took a world literature class, so obviously we couldn't read all of them, but we did read parts. And we read part of Tale of Genji. It was fascinating, and this is a novelization of the author's life. Next, we have a book that definitely took up a chunk in my suitcase, and this is from my friend Katie for my birthday / Christmas, and that is, no, I mean, it's because I'm curious, Disney A to Z, the official encyclopedia. Basically, oh no! Sorry, there's color on my pages. Basically, you choose a name or a movie, such as Robert Hayes, and it says actor appeared in Trenchcoat, Terry Leonard. Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, as Bob, and Homeward Bound 2, The Lost in San Francisco, also as Bob. Or Mickey Down Under, which is a film, Mickey Mouse cartoon released March 19th, 1948, directed by Charles Nicholl. Mickey in the Australian bush throws a boomerang that gets caught in Pluto's mouth. Mickey then discovers the egg of an emu. Unfortunately, the parent chases him, Pluto and the boomerang zoom into his path, leaving the emu all tangled. So they're just little blurbs about everything Disney, all the films, the actors, all of it. I believe, I'm not sure when this one was published. I could check, couldn't I? Oh, lordy. That is a lot of, well, it was published sometime recently, but it's really fun. Another one she got, because apparently I am strong, is The Queens of Animation by Natalia Holt. This is the women who got into animating in Disney first and changed history that way. Oh yes, and stickers. I remember that one. Alright. But this also sounds fascinating. Nonfiction, as you may have been able to figure out, and I'm super excited to get into it. And the last one Katie got me is Pocket Full of Colors, The Magical World of Mary Blair by Amy Guglielmo and Jacqueline Tourville. This is a children's book about Mary Blair, who was the first female animator at Disney. And may I just say, the illustrations are beautiful. This one I've already flipped through and it's stunning, so maybe tomorrow night I will just flip through and read it. By the way, I'm sorry, I realize that this is another very long video, but as you can see, I had a lot of books in December. My mom bought me this one, and it is 1434 by Gavin Menzies. This is a nonfiction that discusses the start of the Renaissance. Specifically, it claims that when the Chinese sailed to Europe in 1434, as I have no reason to doubt that they did, that's the start of the Renaissance. They brought different ideas, new ideas, better technology, and we adopted it and took it to where we are now, rather than having rediscovered ancient Roman and Greek antiquities, which is redundant, but not the point. This sounds fascinating because it's not something I've ever heard of. Obviously, at least in the States, we are taught that the Renaissance was started, ooh, that's cool, was started and was based on a rediscovery of classical stuff. And this basically is trying to blow that out of the water, so I'll let you know if it does. And then the last book is one that my friend Katie got me because we went to Tattered Cover unsupervised, which is probably not a great thing to do, but you know, we did. And we bought each other books. We went in with the best of intentions, neither of us were going to buy books, and then we saw The Overstory by Richard Powers, and I showed it to her because I think she has to read it. It's a really good book, and right up her alley. And she said, oh yeah, that sounds really good, but I'm not allowed to buy it. And I said, okay, I will. So I bought it for her because my rule was that I wasn't allowed to buy books for me, but buying books for her was different. Of course, that didn't end up well for either of us. We both bought books. And then we went to another section and found this book, which is Today We Go Home by Kelly Estes, and she bought me this. So here we are. This book is about two different women. One in 1861, she has dressed up and gone to fight for the Union, and obviously is in fear of being discovered as a woman, and the other is in present-day Washington, and is enlisted and sent to Afghanistan. Both of these women are struggling with their place in life, and specifically the military, and our modern-day woman finds 1860s woman's diary, and their stories kind of entwine from there. It just sounds really good and very interesting, so I'm hoping it's as good as I think it is. Whew, I know that's a lot of books. I'm sorry, but if you've seen any of these books, have any thoughts, read, whatever, any of them, let me know down in the comments below. I will see you in my next video though.